Good evening. Welcome to the Asheville City Council meeting. If you could take a moment to silence your cell phones, and please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda is the Deerfield Residents Appreciation Day, and we're gonna talk about that. We have several folks here representing the Deerfield retirement community, and we at the city and all of the residents of Asheville are the lucky beneficiaries of Deerfield's incredibly generous donation of $250,000 for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to be spent on affordable housing in the city of Asheville. This is, to my knowledge, the first gift of this type, I should say. And we hope it is the beginning of a new trend, that the Deerfield are trendsetters in the city of Asheville, to show that we need more than just government partners to be able to leverage affordable housing for those that live in Asheville. So if the folks that are here from the Deerfield retirement community would meet me up there, we have a proclamation.
While they're coming, can you?
Is this on? Okay, we have a proclamation that that I will read. Whereas on September 30th, 2019, the Deerfield retirement community donated $250,000 to the city of Asheville in support of city affordable housing needs. And whereas Deerfield Retirement Community is a faith-based nonprofit, is open to all, and provides a continuum of services to empower residents to live life to the fullest retirement home. And whereas Deerfield Retirement Community is committed to maintaining an attractive, comfortable, enriching, and functioning residential environment by providing for the highest quality in housing, healthcare, security, stimulating activities, and support services for community residents. And whereas Deerfield Retirement Community has a long history of helping others and the community by making significant philanthropy contributions. And whereas the $250,000 donation from the Deerfield Retirement Community to the City of Asheville's Affordable Housing Trust Fund will assist in the development of affordable housing in Asheville. Now therefore I, Esther E. Manheimer, Mayor of Asheville, do hereby proclaim that October 22nd, 2019 be proclaimed Deerfield Residents Appreciation Day in the City of Asheville for the generous donation and their proactive commitment to being a part of the solution to addressing the city's affordable housing needs. So we're going to invite the council members down here to take a photo with all of you and this enormous check. But if there is any, and I think it really is the biggest enormous check we've ever received. If there's anybody who would like to speak on behalf of Deerfield, this would be an opportunity to do that. And please step up to this microphone, and for the cameras, you can face this direction.
I just I'm Bob Warnett. I'm the CEO of Deerfield. And Deerfield has been in existence for 64 years. We're 64 years young. And as you said, we have a history of giving back to the community. Our community was very moved over time as we have learned about the housing crisis for affordable housing. And we want to play a part in that. And we have researched and done a lot of looking at that. We're doing some other things in that area that you'll be hearing about, hopefully in the days ahead. But we wanted to be part of this and take a lead role. And we were thrilled to learn about this trust fund and what it's doing, and are proud to be a part of it.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is a resolution entitled Senior Suffrage Census Kickoff Day. And Brian Haynes, Councilman Brian Haynes will read this proclamation, and if anyone is here regarding this proclamation, please come forward.
Whereas senior suffrage, a 2020 census partner, provides educational opportunities leading to an accurate census count, residents of Asheville use the census data for community initiatives benefiting all of us. And whereas everyone must be counted in the census regardless of age, resident status, or location, and whereas federal law requires that all information collected be kept confidential, the information compiled cannot be shared with law enforcement, the courts, or immigration for 72 years. And whereas the census is the basis for reapportioning congressional seats, redistricting, and distributing billions of dollars in federal funds to support our state, county, and community vital programs. And whereas senior suffrage is reaching out to many isolated residents who might not easily participate, many barriers including fear, mobility, vision issues, hearing issues, and computer access contribute to an undercount. Now, therefore, Esther Manhire, Mayor, City of Asheville, does hereby proclaim November 1st as Senior Suffrage Census Kickoff Day in the City of Asheville and encourage residents to participate in activities and the census count.
You said a lot of things I was going to say. Hello. I'm so happy to join the goal of an all-resident encompassing census. Did you know that there are at least 50 ways this data will be used? If you did not get your copy of these facts out there when you came in, get it when you go out because it's there for you. Our states also use these statistics. But we do need to be so careful. Apparently, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 40% of children were not counted in the 2010 census. 40%. Also remember that many residents may fear incarceration or deportation if they open the door and speak out. We can reassure them that Uncle Sam censors all census data for at least 72 years. No one can get it. Not ICE. No one can get it. $675 billion federal dollars are in the fund and will be fairly distributed to us all. We need to help each other, remind everybody to be sure to be counted.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Questions, comments, or a motion, and when you make your motion, I need item E removed from your motion. So it would be a motion to approve the consent agenda without item E, which I guess we're not considering tonight at all. So
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda excluding item E.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Council, any questions from anyone on council about any item on the consent agenda? No, okay. Anybody wishing to comment on the motion to approve the consent agenda? Yes. You'll have 3 minutes, and please state your name. No, you gotta go to the microphone. No, the little one. Sorry, I know, that's just a test to see if you can figure it out.
Okay, is this good? Okay,
Perfect.
great. Hello, everybody. My name is Alex, and I would like to talk about the climate crisis this evening. On September 20th, we saw the biggest
So
climate...
this is a comment on the consent agenda. We will have an opportunity for comment on any item you'd like, but do you have a comment regarding the consent agenda?
Yes, I would like the climate crisis to be on the consent agenda.
It is not on the consent agenda,
Okay.
because it's not a consent item. But later, we will have an opportunity for you to speak on the climate crisis.
Okay.
And I welcome you to please stay to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to comment on the consent agenda? Okay, with seeing no one else. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we've adopted the consent agenda. The next item is, we have one item under presentations and reports, and this is the manager's report, focused this time on transit.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Campbell, take it away.
Thank you very much. Just shortly, well, she's already here. Jessica Morrissey will be up to give us an update. And when I say us, I mean the council and the community, an update on the implementation of a partial piece of the first year Transit Master Plan. You all have been receiving a number of emails about transit and extending hours. We know that that's critically important to the community. You will likely hear people comment on the extension. We would love to extend the hours. However, we don't have the funding as of yet. You will hear Jessica, as part of her presentation, she's going to talk about the two actions that you all took as part of the budget process. The first was to do route configurations and all those things that were associated with the implementation of that. The second piece was for us to look at, over the coming months, to determine if there were any cost savings, but also for us to determine what it would take from a resource and capital perspective to extend the hours. We're going to provide you, excuse me, the presentation on that entire process, and I hope that the community will understand we are working as hard as we can to get the information about the costs, but also until we have budget projections as it relates to any savings, we cannot commit to extensions of the hours. So we hope, again, by maybe January or February, we will have a better idea as to whether we will have budget savings. With that, I'll turn it over to Jessica to give you an update, particularly focusing in on the services that will be implemented January 2020. Jessica?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Jessica Morris, Assistant Director of Transportation. First, I just wanted to go over and remind everyone what was approved in the current fiscal year that we're in, fiscal year 2020. So we had an additional $1.2 million added to our operational funds for this current fiscal year, and about $1 million of that went towards the contract that we have with our operations and maintenance contractor for the purpose of extending or doing some route reconfigurations, improving quality in terms of the on-time performance, adding additional staff that would be dedicated to customer service and maintenance. And then we had the other $200,000 was to go towards the maintenance facility study, which we very much need to do and have already started working on, and additional fuel and additional consultant costs and support for us as we move to launch the service increase in January. As Deborah mentioned, the other thing that we committed to at that time was to continue to monitor our budget and see if we could more quickly implement the last portion of the first year of the Transit Master Plan. This is definitely too small to see. This is a graphic that outlines the various steps that we are taking. When I say we, I mean both city staff and also our contractor, to gear up for the January 2020 service increase. So this graphic is intended to show you sort of a summarized version of a much larger task sheet. So we have been working diligently to make sure that our route analysis is done, retiming all of our routes, the existing ones and the new ones. Part of what we've been working on also is updating our maps and schedules. And we selected a contractor. We've been working with a contractor to help us with that. On the contractor side, our ATP Dev side, part of what they have to do is hire a lot of new drivers as well as mechanics, and as I mentioned, the customer service staff that they have agreed to hire in preparation for January. So their process of hiring has already started. We also have been working on vehicle procurement. Back in the August meeting, you guys approved some procurements for us, and so we have buses that are going to be delivered to us in December, and then we'll have another round of buses in the spring and another round at the end of 2020. And all of this is to keep us progressing as far as our fleet state of good repair is. And then finally, like as we get towards the January 5th launch date that we're shooting for, we will be doing a lot of public outreach, and we're going to be starting that actually in the next few weeks. But the public outreach will be everything from social media to cards that we will hand out on the buses that will alert people to what the changes are that they're going to see, whether it's added frequency or the schedule might be shifting a little bit. So there's a lot of work that's going on, and we are on track as of now to have the service launch on January 5th. To speak to the extended hours, we are still monitoring our budget. We're only 2.5 months into this fiscal year, so we will continue to look at not only the transit budget, but the city budget as a whole to see if there are any savings that might be available to extend the hours. And we're also right now working on the cost estimate that Deborah spoke to. We want to make sure that the cost estimate we come to you guys with is accurate. And so we are working with our ATP Dev and internally to make sure that we have every line item accounted for so that we bring you a great cost estimate, an accurate cost estimate. And so some of the things that we are looking at are, of course, that cost estimate will change based on when we implement service. If we were to try to implement service July 1st of 2020, then you would be budgeting for a full year of that increase. If it were October or January, then that is going to have an impact on the budget. Paratransit is a piece of that, a small piece, but there is a paratransit increase that would be part of our cost estimate. We also want to make sure that there's not any significant maintenance impact in terms of the contractor, our ATP Dev, needing to have, for example, a third shift of maintenance if we're extending later into the evening. Obviously, there would be, with service increase, there's a staff increase for our ATP Dev, and that would likely include operators, dispatchers, additional mechanics. It would mean that we would have our transit station open later. So additional security, additional customer service staff. And then, of course, fuel increases. So we'll be calculating that based on current fuel costs and expected usage that would go along with that. So all of that is to say that we will continue to work towards implementing the January 2020 increase. Again, that's a 25% service increase and is pretty significant. And that's been taking a significant amount of time, both for the city staff and for the RATP Dev staff. We will be finalizing our operating budget estimates to implement the next phase of the first year of the master plan. And we will have those estimates to you by December. And then again, as Deborah mentioned, we will continue to monitor the budget and determine whether or not we have any savings that could go towards that. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
So, I mean, not a question, Jessica, but, one of the questions, I guess, more for us is, okay, assuming all of this works, the question is where to get the funding from, right? And one area that I did not know about until I came on council, and this folks in the audience who may be advocates may already know this, but there is actually an ability to get additional funding that does not require the state legislature to do anything, and that is under existing state law. If the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners decided to vote to put a 1/4-cent sales tax on the ballot, it would have to go for transit expansion countywide, and the sales tax would be countywide as well. That money could be used for expanding transit. And in my mind, and realistically looking at I think to the level of transit expansion that we need to have in this county and in the city, we need a dedicated source. And in all seriousness, that is really the only way that the numbers are going to work in order to have, I think, the level of transit service that we have. So I welcome the folks who are emailing us on the need to have transit and prioritize transit. But if you're not emailing the county commissioners at the same time you're emailing us, I think you're missing an opportunity to advocate for what we're eventually going to need once we have our abilities to operationalize what we can do in the city. That, in my mind, just mathematically is the only way we're going to get the level of transit that we need as a city. Yep.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, I mean, we do need a dedicated source of funding for transit. We've said that for, some of us have said that for years. We probably all believe that. And the county tax has been, the possibility of the county tax, the authorization for the county tax has been in place for a number of years. As one of the city's transit advocates working closely with other transit advocates, our assessment of that as a possible funding source is that it's really not a possible funding source at this time due to the politics in the county, both in the commission and in the electorate, and given the fact that the county did not perhaps do what they should have done with their last special tax, sales tax. So we think the assessment of the advocates is that that is not a great option for us. However, we are not giving up on that idea, and even though it does require legislative approval, we actually think fighting at the legislature for this is easier than trying to get the county to do it, and that is trying to get the city authorization to do its own 1/4-cent sales tax that would support transit. We think that would pass in a heartbeat, and that's not to say that it is not without. It's a challenge. It's a challenge both administratively at the state level and legislatively at the state level. But again, our assessment is that that is an easier lift than trying to go through the county at this point.
Well, I have learned not to doubt Julie's optimism, but legislation passing for cities in a heartbeat.
No. It would. Sorry, the referendum would pass in the
referendum,
city
yes,
in a heartbeat.
I believe the
no,
voters
not
in the city.
the legislature
Yes.
does anything in a
Okay.
heartbeat.
Now I understand.
Yeah, no. I don't pretend that that's going to be easy. So Jessica, just to, so this is very helpful. I appreciate this. And so we will see in December, you all will come back to us with, if you can go back, maybe, yeah. So in December, you'll come back to us with sort of answers on all of these
Correct.
things? Okay.
Correct.
Great.
And I imagine that, I mean, there's a couple variables here, the timeline being the primary one. So what I imagine is we'll bring you examples of what it would cost if we started July 1st, October 1st, January 1st of 2021, so you can get an idea of what impact that has to the overall cost. I will add that if we were to try to start the next extension in July, it would be challenging for staff logistically, because it would be coming kind of on the heels of the January one. Not impossible, but
Right.
but I think, you know, as Deborah mentioned, the revenue piece of this puzzle is still something that we're waiting for,
Right.
and we'll be waiting for a few months.
Yeah, well, you know, we all agreed that transit was our number one priority last year. I think my guess is it continues to be a number one priority. And I hope that when this conversation comes to us in December, that we're all going to be prepared to do what we need to do to start these, to implement these extended hours as soon as we possibly can. My hope is that that would be July, maybe even earlier than that, not to give you a heart attack, but certainly before January 2021. So, thanks.
Because you may not be here.
I'll just conclude that with the statement that not only is it a priority for council, we know it's a priority for the community, and it's definitely a priority for staff. If it were easy, I promise you, it would have been done. I have to agree with both Julie and VJ in terms of needing another source of funding, whether it's the state, the county, doesn't matter to us. We just need more revenue. It is so difficult to try to build the kind of transit system that we want in this community on the backs of a parking fee and a general fund. It is just, we just don't have enough resources. But we are hopeful. We are going to do what we need to do from an analysis perspective, give you all the best information that we can give you so you can make an informed decision about extending the hours. And we will continue to watch not only the transit budget, but also the broad overall operating budget for the city. But we will not have that kind of information really until January or February at the earliest. So thank you all. We appreciate it.
Are there other questions? And Deborah, I want to thank you for bringing this forward. This has been an ongoing discussion, and trying to keep the conversation clear and with forward movement is really important. And just to recap, there is already authorizing legislation that allows counties to hold a referendum on a 1/4-cent sales tax for transit. It has to be authorized by county commissioners in that county to put it on the ballot. Then the voters countywide have to approve it. It would be the most efficient way for us to raise the most money for transit. The counties that have done it are Orange, Wake, Mecklenburg, Durham. And I'm not sure if any smaller counties have done it, but we're kind of right on the cusp of a county that might be able to do it. I'm a little more optimistic that our county might support a referendum like this, but I still think we need to have a conversation with our county partners about why this might be an option and why we should consider it. Unlike a general 1/4-cent sales tax, which Julie alluded to with reference to the AB Tech 1/4-cent sales tax, a 1/4-cent sales tax for transit is confined. It must, by statute, be spent on, not only does it have to be spent on transit, but it has to be spent on additional transit services. So you can't use it to displace what you're already spending money on. So it really is the most bang for your buck. It would raise about $13 million a year countywide if something like that were to pass. But kudos to Julie for getting the governor's office to participate in a conversation, which I was able to participate in as well, around the logistics needed to get legislation to allow cities to have this same option that doesn't exist yet statutorily. And the Department of Revenue is somewhat bucking the concept of trying to track sales tax on a citywide basis rather than just a countywide basis. So there are some hurdles there, but I think we're definitely, as a state, moving in a direction where it makes more sense for cities to have this option as well. So those are some things for transit advocates to think about in terms of other things we need to push for in addition to additional transit services here in the city. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a couple of items on our public hearing agenda, but the first item, I need a motion to continue it until December 10th, 2019.
I move to continue this.
Item A.
The item A, which is conditional zoning of 1 South Tunnel Road from Regional Business District to Mixed Use Expansion Conditional Zoning to be continued until December 10th, 2019.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to comment on the motion to continue item A to December 10th? No? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Our second public hearing item is a public hearing to consider conditionally zoning of multiple parcels from Community Business 2 District to Residential Expansion District / Conditional Zone for the development of a 130-unit retirement community located at 213 Long Shoals Road, a portion of 403, 424, 40, 439, 9999, and 433 Overlook Road Extension. Jessica Bernstein is here to talk to us about this project.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. As was stated, this is a request for a conditional zoning from CB2 to Residential Expansion Conditional Zone for a new development. The project site consists of multiple parcels, as you can see on the Exhibit A map here, with a combined area of approximately 6.3 acres, with frontage on Long Shoals Road and Overlook Road Extension. This is in South Asheville. You can see the zoning on either side is also CB2, Community Business 2. There's institutional zoning across the street from Long Shoals Road. And then to the south side is Buncombe County zoning, and that is Lake Julian Park. There's a variety of commercial, residential, and institutional uses along the corridor. This aerial shows there's a few small buildings that are on the site now that would all be removed as a part of this development. The applicant is proposing a 130-unit age-restricted residential development. There's also limited associated uses within the building just for the enjoyment of those residents. There's a single building. You can see it here on the site plan. It's a single building, 3 stories in height. Vehicular access is in 2 locations. The primary driveway is off of Overlook Road Extension. And then there is a secondary driveway proposed from Long Shoals Road that provides mainly service, access to the service components of the site, as well as a few small parking spaces. There's surface parking throughout the development, 133 parking spaces. There's also a few, about 30, that are in single-story detached garage structures. The proposal includes sidewalks along both road frontages. On Long Shoals Road, the proposal's for a 5-foot grass strip with a 10-foot sidewalk behind it. 10-foot width for sidewalks is the requirement of the expansion district that is a part of this conditional zoning. This corridor is also a part of the future Lake Julian Greenway corridor. So putting in that 10-foot sidewalk is also aligned with that goal and that development. There's a small bit of frontage on Overlook Road Extension with a 10-foot sidewalk, and then the sidewalks within the development are all shown as 5-foot wide. That does that's included in a condition that you saw in the staff report. All of the required landscaping is included on the site, as well as open space. The conditions that I just referenced, there's a number of them that go along with the development. The residential expansion district only permits a single driveway access, and as I said, there are 2, but there are 2 road frontages, so staff feels that that is appropriate to request those 2 driveways instead of just 1. The maximum residential density for the expansion district is 20 units per acre. At 130 units, they are at 20.56 units per acre. So we round up when we get to 0.5, so they're technically just above the maximum density allowed. So that's a condition that they've requested. And the internal sidewalks I mentioned are 5-foot wide. They're required to be 10-foot for the district. They've got 10-foot sidewalks on the public frontages, and then are requesting the internal walkways to just be that 5-foot width. There's also a condition in the B1 conditions list that customizes the signage for this development specifically. The applicant held the required neighborhood meeting. The project has been approved with conditions by the Technical Review Committee, as well as received unanimous recommendation for approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission earlier this month. No public comment has been received in the Planning Department other than just general inquiries about the project. It's aligned with council's goals and the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan. The future land use category for this is urban corridor, and it anticipates a higher density residential development. Also, the widened sidewalks help to make the streets more walkable and build out that greenway network, as I mentioned. So staff does recommend approval of the project with the conditions as requested by the applicant. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Will this project contribute to the property tax rolls?
My understanding is that it is a for-profit development.
And they'll buy the property, they'll own it, because right now it's owned by a church.
Correct. There's a number of parcels that are, one of them is owned by the church. There's other private owners
Okay. So
that are,
but
there's an
it's intended to
assemblage.
be
Mhm.
And Jessica, right up there, there's like a little bit kind of at the top. Is that, are they going to maintain the trees that are in that particular section? If I'm looking right on the
A good amount, there's going to be a good amount of grading. I mean, this is going to be mostly graded, but then planted back afterwards. So but a lot of the site will be graded to accommodate this development.
But there is that part that, it looks like there's that parcel that they're not acquiring, right? That as far as it's got
Right.
trees on it now, so who knows what'll happen to it.
That site, yep. So when the application first came in, that was a part of it. There has been a subsequent subdivision that has occurred, so that corner piece is been platted by the county. It's not a part of this project at all.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, does the applicant want to be heard?
Hello. My greetings to the mayor, city council, and administration. My name is Richard Tranter, and I'll be part of a Cameron presentation team tonight. With me also is Bob Lewis, who's Director of Development for Cameron General Contractors. Also, I would like to recognize Pastor King, who's with the Asheville Pentecostal Holiness Church, who's one of the principal owners, is here also, though he does not intend to speak. And I do intend to be very brief because the staff report is very comprehensive. It's something we're in complete agreement with, and I would not be fair unless I gave praise to Jessica Bernstein for working with us on this application. She was a good advocate for your community, helped us to understand the technical requirements, so I do want to thank her for that. Very briefly, Cameron General Contractors is a developer of independent living, which I would like to distinguish from assisted living or skilled nursing care. Independent living it's age-restricted apartments, and there is a need in your community which has been identified by Cameron. They come to the community because they have done market studies, and so they're here to serve your existing elderly community. Age restricted, by the way, is 55 or older. Average age is actually about 80 years old. Typical scenario would be a couple, a spouse has died, they're living in a single family home, and this is the first step in transition housing. You used to always be confronted by the binary choice 30, 40 years ago. I'm 61, I'm thinking about my grandmother's. So it was always like you went from the house to the nursing home. What has happened is there's evolution in housing that is very good for communities. It candidly takes a lot of the anxiety out for families. So what you have is independent living, which they're active adults, and they move because they don't want to deal with the chores of household work, security reasons, and they want to socialize. They want to be amongst their friends. They're about 80% women, so men were 20%. Just want to let you know the statistics on that. And the idea is to provide services to alleviate the burdens as you become older. A couple of facts I just want to throw out because we have had great success with most communities once they understand our concept. We are not seeking tax abatement or anything like that. We're fully taxable. It's about a $35 million construction project. We are obviously not putting any drain on the school districts as long as we keep Charlie Chaplin out of there. That's you got to understand that joke a little bit. He's a very vigorous guy. And we don't put any impact on the roads. About half the residents will come with cars. Very quickly they learn they don't want to drive because they'll use the shuttle and they'll go in groups if they want to do some shopping and the like. So it's a low impact, high economic benefit to the community. But most importantly, it's serving your constituency, the seniors that are obviously have got to have the housing that they need where they have a choice either to stay in the house or that they go to these type of living facilities. Bob Lewis is with me. Bob can also give you just a real brief sense of their operations, how they actually work on the inside. And of course, Bob and I will stay for any questions.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Again, to reiterate Richard's comment, we have identified a need here in Asheville for this type of housing, and Cameron General Contractors builds, owns, and operates senior independent living communities around the U.S. We currently have 31 or 2 open. We have one over in Raleigh that's one of our most successful communities that we have. It runs 100% occupied and has quite a waiting list, has for quite a few years. In relationship to here, we have one in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're working on one in Greensboro, getting ready to start construction there. We've got one going in Morrisville in the Raleigh area also, and over in Wake Forest. So we have again identified a need in Asheville for this type of housing, and we're here to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
Just a couple ones in terms of sort of the frontage on Long Shoals Road. I'm looking not up here. I'm looking at what we have in your packet. Looks like you have a fair number of trees that you're going to be putting up. There's going to be a fair amount of open space, kind of just off Long Shoals Road. Can you talk a little bit about what that's going to look like in terms of, how much you have up there in terms of the trees as well that you guys will be looking to plant up there?
Yeah, as far as the landscaping goes, again, we are meeting the requirements of the city for any landscaping as required for the size of our building or parking lot and so forth. I can tell you with the construction of the 10-foot sidewalk, if you've been to this site, right now there's a 5-foot walk and there's a pretty good slope right off the back of the sidewalk. So it is going to require some fill in there to accommodate the 10-foot walk, and there's a couple utilities to be relocated. We will probably then behind on our own property put a retaining wall because the building will sit below Long Shoals. If you know the site today, it's down. So we'll probably be, we'll probably be 10 foot below the road grade, if you will. You asked a question about trees, remaining trees. To be honest, by the time we accommodate all of the site development requirements, there won't be a lot left on our site, but we will be required and will plant back as to the landscape requirements.
Right, again, as what I'm looking at, this is, I think, I'm not sure what page this is.
Yeah.
We have, it looks at least on the tree planting site, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, kind of 11 trees right on the road. So if someone's driving up there just for, because you've got a school across the street, right?
Right.
And so what they're going to be seeing is in a couple of years, they're going to be seeing
Yeah.
actually a lot of trees up front, and
correct.
not so much
Yeah.
your building or parking, but.
Right. Yeah, this is a destination site. We're not, we'll have a ground monument sign, but it's not a site where people drive by and, there's a retirement community and we want to come there. So we're not, the visibility is not necessary from that standpoint for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing. If you wish to comment on this, this item, you'll just need to raise your hand. You'll have 3 minutes and you'll need to state your name. Anyone wishing to comment on this item? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Council, do I have questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I move to approve the conditional zoning request for the project known as Julian Woods Retirement Community, Community Business 1 to Residential Expansion District Conditional Zone, and find that the request is consistent with the city's adopted comprehensive plan, is reasonable, and is in the public interest, and that 1, the existing future land use category urban corridor is appropriate and supportive of this higher density residential use. 2, the project provides pedestrian connections along Long Shoals Road and Overlook Road Extension. And 3, the proposal is aligned with strategies found in the city's comprehensive plan regarding activating the pedestrian experience, supporting the greenway network, siting uses along corridors that are supported by transit, and locating residential density proximate to other commercial uses contributing to a mixed-use corridor.
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, folks, that concludes our public hearings agenda. We have one item with 2 parts of unfinished business. These are the district elections, and if anybody has any questions of the city attorney, he is here and available. I have you as Brad, if any. So we are not taking public comment on these items tonight because we did the public hearing at our last meeting. So this is for our final vote. And there will be no other votes necessary for these charter amendments. So the first is an ordinance amending the City of Asheville Charter to provide for at-large elections for the members of the City of Asheville City Council. In other words, this would restore the charter to an election structure without districts. Do I have questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I move to adopt the 2 proposed ordinances amending the City of Asheville Charter for the following.
If we can vote on these separately, individually.
Okay, so I make a motion to adopt a proposed ordinance amending the City of Asheville Charter for the following purposes, well, it's written together. For the following purpose, to provide for at-large elections for the members of the City of Asheville City Council.
Okay, that's a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, Brian seconded that. All those in favor?
So can we have comment
Oh,
on this,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
just-
sure,
just-
sorry.
just-
We're not
I'll
doing
be-
public hearing, but yeah.
I'll be-
Council can, of course, comment, sorry.
Right, I'll be brief. I want to start with a positive about this vote, and that is at least we will have this decision over with after a few more minutes, and folks will have some clarity about next year's election. While the General Assembly, I think most folks know by this point, has the ability to change things back, I hope they don't, as all I think that'll do is result in costly litigation. That'll be a waste of taxpayer money and a serious distraction. So if you support a system with some districts, as I do, I actually think the best way of going about it is through a voter referendum that our charter allows, as long as you get a petition signed by 15% of registered voters in the city. It's a high bar for sure, but it's not impossible. For my own opinion, and again, I've been pretty vocal about this, I think going back to an all-at-large system is probably the worst route we could have taken. While it might be better for certain council members individually, I think for the city as a whole, for the average resident, for minority communities seeking better access to their representatives, it's the worst system out there. And that's not just my view, it's shared by many others, civil rights and voter rights organizations. During this process, we didn't take the time to investigate the facts, and I think that's unfortunate. I do want to take a moment to do something unusual, and that is to thank a member of the public, Jonathan Wainscott, for the time that you took analyzing the data and the facts. You were one of the few who did, and you had to endure people criticizing your motives. But I've listened closely, and never once did I hear someone contradict a statement that you made. Asheville can be a place that cares more about who says something than the truth of what they're saying. Finally, with this return to at-large elections, I think as a political observer, next year's city council elections will be like nothing we've ever seen before. The primary turnout will probably be twice the turnout when I was elected, and the general election about 3 times. People who have never voted in a council election will actually probably outnumber those who have in next year's election. And to those who support this action tonight, we'll see what happens next year, but all I can say is be careful what you wish for, you just may get it.
Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Second one, we have a second one. Do you want to do it again?
Yeah.
Okay, ready?
I'll see if I can get this right this time. I move to adopt a proposed ordinance amending the City of Asheville Charter for the following purpose: to provide that Asheville City Council elections be conducted by the nonpartisan primary and election method.
Yep. Okay, Brian seconded. So this is the, a motion and a second to allow the primary to be restored. When the legislation was passed, it was amended on the House floor, which removed the City of Asheville's primary, and this will restore it. And the use of the word nonpartisan, for whatever reason, is necessary in the charter amendment, but we already had a nonpartisan system, so that is not a change, just the fact that we're restoring a primary. So we have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to comment on council? No? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, thank you. We have 2 items of new business, and Paul D'Angelo is going to handle both of those for us, and here he is. The first is a resolution repealing and replacing the fee grant program for affordable housing development adopted by Resolution 17-226 with a new standalone affordable housing fee rebate program. And then I bet you're also going to talk about the resolution amending the City of Asheville's land use incentive policy.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City Management. Paul D'Angelo with the Community and Economic Development Department. Again, talking tonight about updating our fee rebate policy to be a standalone fee rebate policy. You have the staff report in front of you. I would like to go over some highlights of the fee rebate policy, where our community development work with stakeholders, partners, and other members of the community to talk about taking a look at updating this policy to be better used for building community and affordable housing. We're proposing a 50% grant rebate, 75%, or 100% grant rebate. For 50% off, we would ask for the proposed development to be within the Asheville city limits, that the project serve individuals and household at 80% area median income for 20 years. If it's an ownership project, it would also be under 80% of area median income. The project can be either new construction or rehabilitation. If it is a rehabilitation or redevelopment, we're asking that the rebuilt units match 1-for-1 with the area median income and the affordability rate that was there to begin with. And at least 20% of the units in the development must be affordable for the grant rebate. To get the 75% fee rebate on that individual affordable unit, we're looking at a rental project where serving 60% of the area median income for individuals and families for 20 years. If it's an ownership household, we also ask that be 60% area median income to serve that family, or 20% of the units be universally designed to make them accessible to all people, regardless of age, disability, and other factors. To receive 100% rebate, 100% fee rebate on the affordable unit, we're looking at a developer offering permanent affordability in the rental unit or permanent affordability in a for sale product such as the Community Land Trust, or affordability where at least 20% of the units target individuals and families under 30% of area median income, or those homeless or in danger of being homeless, in other words, taking an individual or family perhaps off the homeless by name list. Eligible development fees for rebate for affordable housing would include planning and zoning, site development, building safety, fire, and water service connection. Ineligible development fees would be homeowner recovery, re-inspection or resubmittal, technology, temporary certificate of occupancy, or Western North Carolina Air Quality Agency. With this affordable housing rebate, we look to combining this with some of our sustainability fee rebates, particularly for sustainable fee rebates for single-family homes. So we included that in this policy where you could receive a $100, $250, or $500 fee rebate for sustainability for a single-family home if you offer a level of energy efficiency from Energy Star to a Green Built Home Certified. If you're offering solar panels with the individual single-family home, you could get a $175 rebate. And depending on the type of tree protection you're doing, whether that be a new tree or replanting of an old tree, there's also the possibility for rebates there as well. This goes along with council goals of quality, affordable housing and an equitable and diverse community. It has been through committee And you see the pros and cons as part of the staff report. We did want to point out a couple fiscal impacts. The water service connection fee revenues are realized in the Water Resources Enterprise Fund and cannot be used to incentivize affordable housing development. Rebates for these fees would come from general fund. And although the city receives revenue from these fees are paid by developers, the rebate typically occurs in the subsequent fiscal year after the project is complete and occupied. There could be a little lag time there and might not necessarily offset the development fees in the same year that the rebate is applied. There is a budget that we have for this fiscal year for fee rebates, and taking a look at how this would be used in the future, it might not be enough to actually match the fee rebates if this is utilized for affordable housing, so that would be a consideration as well for fiscal impact. The policy is in front of you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thanks, Paul, to you and the staff for continuing to be creative and to go back and look at our old policies, trying to make them better and more effective so that we can incentivize more people to take advantage of them. And so for the thousands of people who are out there watching and wanting to build affordable housing, here's a new policy. And we're about to do another one. So
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, voting wise,
I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay,
Do you want me to
please.
do that?
Please
Yeah.
do.
So I move we approve this new standalone fee rebate policy.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there anyone wishing to comment on the motion? Yes, Mr. Nutter.
I am David Nutter. I believe that attracting for-profit private sector developers to build affordable housing in our city should be one of Asheville's main housing goals. They are invaluable sources of money. The Land Use Incentive Grant Program we have had since 2010 has thus far not attracted such developers in any number, presumably because it is hard to follow and not sufficiently flexible as a public-private partnership program. A reasonable amount of flexibility on both sides is essential in negotiations between the public and private sectors. The amendments you are considering for approval will remove some of Luigi's bugs and help attract developers to provide affordable housing in significant amounts over significant periods of time. Just to mention it, our Luigi program is what we call synthetic tax increment financing, in which we substitute grants for tax abatements as used in other states because North Carolina does not allow tax abatements. As a member of your council's Greenway Committee and Multimodal Transportation Commission, I am pleased to see multimodal paths included as an eligible element which can offer additional points for the developer. We need such coordinated provisions to implement our Greenways master plan. Please approve these well-thought-through amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment on this motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, do I have a motion for the second item, B, amending the City of Asheville's land use incentive policy?
Make a motion to amend the land use incentive grant policy with the proposed changes as described.
I'll second that, but do we want Paul to come talk about it?
Yeah, because he really only talked about the
Do you want
The first one.
And Dave,
My only question is, can we still call it Luigi?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, good, because it sounds like we had pasta
What
or
would you like to
something.
call it?
I don't know, that's good.
Susan?
Well, just a couple highlights from the policy. Again, Paul D'Angelo with Community Economic Development. A few highlights with this policy where we did really reach out to stakeholders, developers, and community members to take a look at updating this to see if we could perhaps get this policy and this program more used in the community. Every 5 points versus every 10 points equals 1 year property tax abatement. We added to the maximum length of property tax grant, which would be 20 years plus 1. A minimum of 20 years of affordability versus what was 15. We added a walkability score. We did add points for serving low-income individuals and families under 60% of the area median income, an additional length of tenant affordability, and update in points for that category. Additional points for accepting tennis-based rental vouchers, which is an issue we have in the community, so we added points for that. Also for points for removing individuals from the homeless by name list, which is part of our continuum of care grant, which really helps our scoring system there. Also for additional points for locating in the central business district and/or urban centers. Points if there's a brownfield development, points for energy efficiency, as well as rehab and redevelopment. We did also look at the land use incentive grant, Luigi, is that if it comes for property tax abatement, the building has to be at least 70% residential. And we also added points for universal design, as well as building outside of a QCT, which is a qualified census tract. Those are our lower income census tracts, but working with the community, trying to not concentrate lower income or moderate income, and encouraging folks to build in neighborhoods rich in amenities. So those were some of the highlights from the proposal.
Well, I have a quick question. The memo says, let's see, where is it? That the draft Luigi policy is attached, and in general, changes in red have been recommended. But all the changes that you're proposing in the policy have been voted on.
In general.
Right, it's not in general,
Yes.
they have been.
Yes,
Okay.
through committee, yes.
Okay.
Generally.
Paul, one other thing, and I appreciate you all doing this. You know, I know you went over a lot of the changes. Another one is for rehab and redevelopment, adding language at a minimum a 1-to-1 ratio of the redeveloped rehab units must be targeted at the same area median income as the original units. I think this was added for the concern that you have something like a mobile home community, which is what we had 4 off of Long Shoals Road. Oddly enough, talk about Long Shoals tonight. But this is in a situation that if you do something like that, and a Luigi grant is provided, what will need to happen is a 1-to-1, basically replacement.
Yes.
The same area median income. So that's one of those ones where you could have the perverse effect prior to this of basically incentivizing affordable housing, but actually getting rid of more deeply affordable housing. That
Correct.
will not happen under this proposal. So we appreciate that.
Sure.
You already have a motion.
Already have a motion, a second. Okay. Anyone wishing to comment on this motion? No? Okay. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our printed agenda. I have a number of folks that are signed up to speak, so I'm going to call them in order and then do hand raisers. Is that okay? All right. Normally. All right. So the first person signed up to speak is Daniel, I believe it says DeWitt. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And I already stated your name, but if I didn't state it correctly, you tell me how I should have stated it.
No.
No,
Okay. Yes, my name is Daniel DeWitt. I live in Woodfin. Thank you for having me. I'm here on behalf of the Sunrise Movement and the Climate Reality Project. We were out downtown on the Friday, September the 20th, trying to push for a climate emergency. And we can tell that you guys are pushing for a lot of good things. And it's for that reason that we're trying to push for a little bit more, for making it better. We need to recognize that this is an emergency, and we're looking to leaders to really frame things in that context of urgency. We look at the Duke Energy bill, cooperation, and they're looking for carbon neutrality in 2050. This is 10 years after the marine biologists say that all the fish will be dead. No more fish in the ocean. So is that really a scale that we can embrace? And Asheville right now is making a choice. Asheville can either be a symbol or it can be a symptom. We can be a mountain town or we'll turn into mini Charlotte. And people come here, this is a desirable city for the nature.
Be still.
We can go, you can have a beer anywhere, you can brew beer in Kansas, you can't go hike Craggy Gardens in Kansas. So I would ask that we kind of reframe what we can do and embrace the ethos that we all enjoy and try to advocate for by living in this place. Thank you.
Thanks. The next person signed up is Joanne Okay, Bolette.
On her behalf, my name's Quinn Powers. I signed up and she signed up. Is it okay if we just take her turn?
Well, no, we'll get to you. Will you signed up? So she doesn't want to use hers. Okay. Quinn Powers. And now.
All right, let's have some class before I talk about this because it's about to get pretty dark. My name's Quinn Powers. I'm here on behalf of Miss Laureen Webb. She lives at the corner of Montana and Hanover Street. She's lived there for 13 years. She came with our building, and I love her very much. I consider her my godmother. So, to start at the beginning, there's a bus stop at the corner of Montana and Hanover Street. This bus stop is a constant problem. The problem I'm going to talk about is heroin. Heroin is all over my neighborhood. I see it every day. I see guys scoring on the corner. I see this bus stop specifically. Yesterday I had to call a policeman and an ambulance because there was a young couple, the same age as me and Joanne. The young man is over there doubled up in an S shape. The young lady is laying on her belly on this bus stop. This bus stop doesn't really seem to ever get used for people to catch the bus. Seems to only get used to catch a buzz. I have a photo of the bus stop today.
You might be able
I went over there today, and it upsets me to no end that every day I go over there, I see more and more syringes. Today I went to that same bus stop, and I took a picture to bring to show to all of you.
You might be able to put it under the, yep, in it, there we go. Okay.
There are at least 9 syringe caps in this photo. The day before that, I found a woman's backpack with cosmetics and all kinds of stuff. In the front pocket of that backpack, syringes, tons of them. I just want to create awareness about what's happening on my street. I have to call the non-emergency number very frequently. I have a dog that protects our home. Today, the dog catcher shows up and starts telling me that I can't really have my dog in my yard because he's on a line. I get it. There's a law against dogs being left on lines. That makes sense. But we're scared. We're very scared. Let's talk about the next part of this story. A man named Lamar Kelly. I'm a musician. That's where I'm wearing this jacket, to show you my rock and roll attitude, okay? Saturday night, I'm playing with my band with my lovely Joanne. We get done with our gig. Her sister is there with her cousin Brittany and their friend Josh. They go over to the One Stop, the Quick Stop gas station that's right there at the corner of 240 and Haywood Road, our street. Haywood Road is our street. They go in there to get a pack of smokes. God forgive them, okay? We should all quit by now. It's 2019. The kid comes outside. He's standing there for 5 minutes while we go back to our house at the corner of Montana and Hanover to unload our music gear. She goes back to pick him up. I'm walking the dog for 5 minutes. She calls me and says, Josh has been stabbed. A young man by the name of Lamar Kelly, who I suspect is on a gang initiation quest, comes up at the gas station, jumps out of his car, and stabs my friend in the back 4 times. I just don't understand, guys. This isn't the Asheville that I met when I moved here 6 years ago to be closer to my sister and to make music and make art here. I think that there is a blind eye that is being turned to this problem. So that's why I wanted to speak today. Thank you very much.
The next person I have signed up to speak is Emma Hutchins. Okay, Sarah Benoit.
Just keep it.
No, she wrote it really clearly too.
And it hasn't changed.
I know. Sorry.
Hey, good evening. My name is Sarah Benoit, and I'm glad to be here this evening. First of all, just thank you all for everything that you're doing to keep working through a lot of the issues that the city's facing. I'm here tonight just because I wanted to come up and talk a little bit about my work and my solidarity with the Sunrise Asheville movement. I have been working with Sunrise on and off here in town for the last few months, and I participated in the climate strike that happened on September 21st. And I just got to spend a lot of time with some younger people in our city to talk about really the concerns that they have about the climate crisis and about the things that they're really looking for us to step up and do. And I had some time to go away and connect up north with some people that are also involved in this movement. And I just really want to encourage the city of Asheville as a whole, and especially our leadership, to really be thinking about how we really innovate and get away from our limiting views on what we can do when it comes to climate action and declaring a climate emergency. You know, I'm 44 years old. I feel like I'm sort of dealing with this issue of the fact that really I gave up a long time ago and stopped working on climate issues because I felt exhausted, and I don't have kids, so I decided it wasn't my problem anymore. And I took a lot of years off of being involved in that part of it, and I've been really, truly inspired by the youth at Asheville High and also the youth across the country that are really asking us to take a different look at things. And I think in North Carolina, we're making some really big strides, and I think a lot of us have a heart towards real change when it comes to protecting the land that we love so much and really looking at how our future is going to develop over the next few years. And so at the same time, I feel like what we're being asked to do is really rethink the way that we live our lives and rethink the way that we prioritize things, especially when it comes to budgets and money. And I think the climate crisis and the issue around our natural resources is essentially going to impact everything that I've listened to our community talk about over the last year. It really encompasses everything from housing to transit to employment. I just feel like there's so many things that are affected by this. So I just want to really support the people that I know are coming out to talk about having our city declare a climate emergency. And I just really want to encourage all of us, especially those of us who are older. I know it's hard to think about changing the world at the level that we need to change it, and there's lots of reasons, policy-wise and legally, why we should say that we can't do what I think the youth are asking us to do. But I also think that we're at a point where we can no longer continue to use that as an excuse. So thank you so much.
Sally Thames.
Hi, I'm Sally Timms, and I'm here today. It's okay. I'm here today with the Sunrise Movement Asheville. A month ago, 500 Asheville citizens took to the streets to demand action from our city leaders. You have ignored them. You were voted into office to represent the people of Asheville, not to push aside their very real concerns. We are in the midst of a crisis, and your inaction is forcing youth like me to leave school and work to come fight for our basic right to a future. You praise yourself for your new sustainability plan that is a small step in the right direction, but it is nowhere near enough. This new plan would only reduce the city's emissions by 1%. Communities of color in Asheville and throughout the state will be affected more drastically and first. Let us not forget, as we just saw the 14th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina in Louisiana, that 75,000 Black residents were displaced, and New Orleans is still facing effects from the storm. We will not be spared from similarly destructive natural disasters. You have a responsibility to the people you claim to care about to take action against the climate crisis. As energy prices rise, it becomes harder for those in low-income communities to keep the lights on. As pipelines are tunneled through our beautiful state, Indigenous communities are threatened, as are the places we all find our respite, our mountains, coasts, and forests. We cannot stand idly by while we watch our homes and countless lives bear the brunt of a crisis that we have the power to stop. Climate migration is an issue that will only increase until our city cannot hold its inhabitants. As more storms ravage the coasts of the southeastern United States, displaced people will turn to Asheville, a beautiful mountain town, to make their new home. And when housing prices rise in response to increased immigration, poor and working class people will not be able to stay in their homes. We have to show up for them. Asheville is facing two things: a crisis and an immense opportunity. Asheville could create thousands of well-paid and equitable jobs while proving that our city has the integrity and efficacy to do what is right. Jobs could be made available through mass transit efforts, locally grown food and agriculture initiatives, and just transitions to renewable energy careers. Change is frightening. The thought of changing business as usual is scary and anxiety-inducing, but the facts of what will happen if we don't do so are so much worse. The climate crisis should be an underlying factor in every decision that you make. The science is clear. I am tired of spending what are supposed to be the best years of my life fighting for the chance to have any years at all down the line. I'm tired of the inaction and lack of leadership coming from Asheville. Stop relying on young people to clean up messes that you made. We must change now. We do not have a choice. And if you don't act, we will vote against you in 2020.
The next person signed up to speak is Alexandra Lines.
Thank you. My name is Alex, and I'm also here with Sunrise Asheville. On September 20th, we saw the biggest climate mobilization in history. There were 500 of us in Asheville that gathered on this building and asked you to declare a climate emergency. As our elected officials, we have asked that you begin taking immediate action and addressing the crisis with the urgency it requires. But it has been over a month, and we have yet to see anything. Sunrise members were appalled by the October 11th Energy Innovation Task Force meeting, where it became clear that city and county officials have given Duke Energy a disturbing amount of power to vote on a government board. This partnership endorses Duke's 2050 plan, which depends heavily on dozens of new fracked gas plants and the completion of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. This is not a plan that we can celebrate. We refuse to stand by while elected officials cozy up to Duke. We didn't elect them, and their plan is a death sentence for my generation. Sunrise has been attending city council meetings since August, putting pressure on you to declare a climate emergency and pass a resolution. Rather than acknowledging the crisis that we are currently living in, you have asked us to go to other committees to make presentations. We spent an extensive amount of all our volunteer time preparing a climate emergency resolution presentation to give at SACY last week, and we have yet to hear anything about processes or next steps. And we cannot wait for you to take action until it feels politically favorable. It's clear to me that you don't want to talk about this. You made that even more evident earlier this evening by refusing to hear why this should be on the consent agenda. To be clear, I don't want to talk about this either. I'm tired of talking about this, but if I don't talk about this, if my generation doesn't force you to talk about this, then we will face a horrifyingly unjust and dangerous future. The city has told us that we are asking too much and that we need to be patient, but we cannot be patient in the face of this crisis. This is not a time for bureaucracy, and this is not a time to spend months sitting in meetings and kicking this discussion down the line. This is a time for action and bold leadership. We need to come to terms with the reality that we face. The climate crisis is happening now, and it will only get worse, and it will only make the housing, economic, transportation, and gentrification crises we face in this city that much worse. We need a comprehensive climate action plan. We need to realize that this issue underlies every issue that we face. We need to act now, and we can start by agreeing to actually talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak tonight, so I'm gonna, yes, if you have not already spoken, yep, Vicki, it's you.
I'm not sure if I need 10 minutes or not. I know I have at least 2 people seeking time, but I don't know if I need it.
1, 2, you got one more?
Okay.
If you haven't already talked, so you're not gonna talk? Dina, what? Oh my God, okay, all right.
All right, I'm Vicki Meath from Just Economics, and I'm also a West Asheville resident, and Just Economics has our Better Buses Together campaign. Just Economics has spent the last 20 days talking about transit and support for transit and better transit in 2020. The document that I've provided for you outlines support for transit that goes beyond my face and some of our members that you've seen over the years to illustrate that there's a wider community support for better transit in 2020 and beyond. I want to first respond to the comments by Councilman Kapoor around needing a dedicated funding source for transit. We absolutely agree. We are working in support of that. We have been talking to the county. We have been talking to the county for years, and we will continue to talk to the county. And we have not dismissed the quarter-cent sales tax. As Julie knows, we have been working on different multiple fronts to see if that can come to fruition at some point. But the reality is that that won't come about for years. It's going to take getting it on the ballot and then getting it passed before we see any type of funding allocation. And there is a transit master plan with 10 years worth of funding requests needed to advance transit and build a type of system that's really going to work in this community. So we are there, we are working there, and we will continue to work with the county to build support, and we'll continue to work in conjunction with staff and council members at the legislative level to see what opportunities might exist for dedicated source of funding. But because we understand this need for funding outside of the typical increases that come in the general fund year after year, we were particularly excited about the possibility of getting the increased property taxes from the sale of Mission Health to HCA and putting that towards funding the transit system. Because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity when we're getting an increase of revenue at a local level without raising taxes and the individual taxpayer. We understand that there is a structural deficit at the city, and that we understand the challenge that it takes to overcome that. But we don't want to see this mission increase be used simply to prolong the community conversation that needs to take place about the impact of tourism has on our infrastructure and the lack of tax revenue that's created for that, and the increasing community need that comes about when we have a growing city without the corresponding growth in high wage paying jobs. The graph that I've included in your handout, and I can kind of put it under.
Just takes a second.
Okay, the graph that I've included in the handout addresses where the funding could come from in the fiscal 2021 budget, with estimates that I've got from staff and taking into consideration some variables in the numbers that we've heard and that we understand the city to be working out. So for example, the cost of paratransit, with increasing the evening hours, that cost has been fluctuating, and working with staff to get a correct number on what that will actually be. But basically, we know in this current fiscal year, 2019-2020, we've seen about an increase in the general fund from the sale of Mission Health at around 2.8 million, which is what I think that Barbara Whitehorn told me earlier today, and that about 1.2 million of that was spent on transit. We will see in the next budget an additional 2.2 million, which will bring us up to a total of 5 million annually coming into the budget from the sale of Mission Health to the city. And our hope is that we're going to spend. We know that there's that 1.2 will turn into 2.4 because we're only talking about 6 months, and 2.4 would be needed for a full year. And so we're talking about the expansion of evening hours. What would that take? So the second little bar that I have on that graph is showing where we are. The blue area is showing the committed allocation from the mission funding. And I want to just pause and say, I understand that this all goes into the general fund, but it goes back to my broader point about this increase coming from mission and spending that on transit. And then the orange illustrates the amount that's being used on other things from mission or to cover the structural deficit at the city. And what we're asking for is the far right bar, and to increase that funding. We think by 800,000 to $1 million. Again, some of those numbers have been fluctuating based on what we've got from city staff. So this is what we're talking about for next year. We wanted to lay this out, so we're talking about how we continue this funding, because this funding for Mission Health is going to be coming in every single year. And so as far as this year is concerned, having been through many, many council meetings over the years, I understand that we tend to see unused funding around mid-year. When funding we have budgeted goes unspent. So for example, if we have to budget the funding for every single staff person that we're having in a department, even if that staff position goes unfunded. So we often see this unused portion of the budget show up sometime around mid-year, and it's not outside of typical business to allocate that funding, make a budget amendment for something that we continually need in this fiscal year. And I appreciated talking with staff today and kind of working through some of this, and our expectation is that we expect that we'll see some of that funding. I know that from the city side, you can't say we have it until you know you have it, but we expect that we'll see it because we've seen it year in, year out. And we expect that will, once we know that it's there, which we expect to see, that we'll dedicate that funding to implementing evening transit service in this fiscal year. That might be March, April, I'm not sure. I'll leave it up to staff to determine when that's feasible. But we think that it's important to do that this fiscal year and not get behind on this transit master plan. This is what we did in 2009. We had a transit master plan. We started getting behind from the get-go. And I think that we are committed to continually working with the city. We're going to be advocating to the county. We are advocating to the county. We're going to be continuing to look at additional funding sources. But on the back of the document that I provided you, I provided so the front side is kind of some of our reasoning, some of our history, where we think the money comes from and why we're asking for this now. Basically, we know that staff is already talking about next year's budget. And we don't want to wait through the whole budget process because we know that until that allocation is made, staff can't plan for it. And so our hope is, again, that we are going to keep working with you to make sure that it's funded in this fiscal year. On the backside is some of what we kind of learned and heard from riders, from business owners, and from community members over the last 20 days about why it's important to expand funding for transit and expand evening service hours in particular. And we think about all of the things that we do between the hours of 8 and 10 p.m. and what this means for economic opportunity and mobility for a lot of people in our community, and the opportunity for community members to participate more fully in our community. And so again, I'm not ending on a very articulate note, but I just want to say that we are going to continue to press on this until there is a budget amendment. We think that it's possible. We think that there's the capacity. We've already done the hard part of capacity with the route changes, and we hope to see you do this in this fiscal year.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to speak who hasn't already spoken or ceded their time? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Rachel Bliss. I live over at Vanderbilt Apartments. And I came not really intending to speak, but there were a couple things in the meeting I wanted to comment on. VJ had mentioned having a 1/4-cent tax added in the Buncombe County area to fund transit, and Julie recommended Asheville funding system. I see sales tax as a regressive tax, as you all know. And I think if we need to do a sales tax, it needs to be on fuel for our vehicles. People who ride the bus probably don't spend as much money on fuel as the rest of us. So I suggest a 1/2 cent for gasoline and diesel fuel in our area rather than just across the board sales tax. Secondly, the people are going to build the apartments on Long Shoals Road. I was talking with the man sitting behind me, and I asked if there were any subsidized housing in that area that these apartments are, and he said no. I was hoping that a lot of apartments that are being constructed these days do have a certain amount of government subsidized rental units in there. So as this development continues, I'd like to see that our council people and our staff can push to have some of those units be subsidized units. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to speak? Yes. And then somebody else.
John.
Was that who was? Yeah. It's out of the corner of my eye.
My name is Matilda Bliss. Definitely been seeing a convergence of issues lately, and I think there's some good solutions to some of these things. Some ways to take down multiple issues at once, which makes things a little bit easier. So we have a climate emergency. It's definitely been talked about tonight. Economic hardship, which is something that a lot of us definitely face here, and it's really infuriating, and it's really, really hard. Also, as alluded to in another comment, fears about people engaged in alternative economies and who are using drugs. So there's one way to help solve this is funding extended service hours for transit, an amendment in this year's budget, which is a start. So, for instance, significantly less carbon goes into the atmosphere when more people are riding buses. So more ridership, more hours helps to reduce that footprint. And unfortunately, as evidenced by the community meeting in West Asheville on the 17th, residents and business owners have been deluded into believing it's poor people to blame. This is untrue. And so tourism not only produces obscene carbon emissions, but also horrible paying jobs. And we need fewer police, not additional. And with that money, you can fund transit and much more. So another thing is, the hours providing, the extended service hours could provide access to AA and NA meetings, which was brought up in the budget hearing this year, which seems pretty significant in this case. I definitely, for one, can say that, those extended service hours could help me live a more hopeful and connection-full life. And I'm pretty sure it will be true for everyone, because everything that you do past 7 or 8 at night, like there's people that can't do that. So that's an important opportunity, and I hope that it's not passed up. Extended service hours also provide access to employment opportunities, so people don't have to engage in those alternative economies. So as consensus builds that the climate emergency will bring disastrous consequences, I hope you remember that this is a way to address these issues. Community keeps us safe.
Thank you. Yes.
That's okay, Maggie. Appreciate it. You all have VJ to thank for me not giving my prepared remarks tonight. Thank you. My name is Jonathan Wainscott. I appreciate the shout out. Really? That was the fastest 3 minutes I've ever had.
We almost made it. We almost
swear that
got
was
all the
3
way through.
We ready? Am I on? Thanks, Maggie, for the extra couple seconds tonight. Thank you, Mr. Kapoor. Again, I came out tonight to address some things that were said at council last week, but I'd prefer to leave a few of those out. Thanks for your courage, again, to speak out on an unpopular position. I think that at one point you may have described this as political suicide, and, thank you for your recognition. I'm really disappointed in the rest of everybody. I'm really disappointed in the silence some of you have taken on this issue. I'm appreciative of the grace that most of you have displayed when it's come to withstanding harsh criticism. I disagree that this is over. Certainly not. This law came about by way of a citizen of Asheville going to their legislator to get the representation that she found to be lacking in the city. It was not a Republican-led effort. It won't be a Republican-led effort to reverse your reversal. I plan on being engaged in that. I was really hoping that we could get on to other things, but I'll be here to talk about the Tourism Development Authority, other things throughout the year. And, thank you. Thanks for trying. Good night. I like your haircut.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes.
Good evening, my name is Kim Roney. I'm here as a bus rider and advocate with Better Buses Together, requesting that extended transit hours be budgeted through an amendment in this budget cycle. As you know, 30% of our bus routes end by 8 p.m. And I invite each of you to consider the things you do between the hours of 8 and 10 p.m. Perhaps that you would be at the grocery store, an evening class, returning from an event at your kid's school. The narrative I've seen used this week that fully implementing the first year of the Transit Master Plan would have required increased property taxes for the whole city is false. We saw $600K found in the proverbial couch cushions in this cycle, and transit advocates refuse to be pitted against $15 an hour for firefighter pay, an urban forester position, or the Housing Trust Fund, all of which I was terribly surprised weren't funded either. If the city officially acknowledged a climate emergency, we would be planning for these overlapping issues and start seriously allocating resources for environmental justice, equitable access, and economic mobility that would greatly improve resilience for our whole city by investing in our next generation and caring for our planet. I am weary of excuses, constantly moving targets, and misinformation. A new day of collaboration between the city and county and a dedicated funding stream will ensure growth into the county for Asheville Regional Transit in the future. What we need you to do is your part for the city system now, because transit can't wait. We were told in June during the budget hearings that it wasn't the funding that was the capacity that was the issue. Now it's the funding. We now know that paratransit was not 50% of the cost for the hours, so with revenue coming in from property taxes to the sale of Mission Hospital, we're asking you to ensure a network of accessible evening hours includes the entire system so we can join you, finally, in a cause for celebration instead of preparing to constantly fight for these basic needs. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak who hasn't already had an opportunity to speak? There's some discussion about anybody. We do have a closed session, so I'll ask.
Yeah, Mayor, just before that, I just wanted to make one quick point, if we could, prior to that.
Yeah.
On this issue, I'd encourage a lot of you who were talking about the budget issues. Earlier today, we had a finance committee meeting. And at that finance committee, we looked at the updated model, the general fund model. And I think it's worth taking a look at kind of where we came out, which effectively is, I know there's a lot of discussion, I was hearing a lot of discussion tonight about, the additional mission dollars and it baked into the budget. Those are already baked in there. And with the additional expenses that are in there, we're not looking at huge amounts of money. In fact, we're basically spot on for this year, and then next year we're starting to see the gap exist again between revenues and expenses. And that is including what we already have right now with the transit expansion that we've already agreed to do now. So to the extent there's additional mission dollars, they're spoken for in the base budget. There's not an additional bunch of money that's out here. And what the city manager said at the beginning of this meeting was that you can't fund transit just using the general fund and parking fees. Just mathematically, for the way we want to do it here, you can't do it mathematically. You can't. You can't. Unless you want to lay off a significant number of employees in the city, you can't do it. You're not going to find the money in the couch, in the proverbial couch. You're just not going to do it. The only way to do it is to get some type of additional revenue source out here. So I know we're going to be having this conversation over the coming months and into next year's budget, but I would strongly encourage folks today who are talking on the transit issue, who are talking on the budget issue, and on the climate change as well, to take a look at that, to take a look at the web. Hopefully we have it saved somewhere, but it'll give you a better sense of what we are actually projecting our budgets to look like in the coming years.
Yeah, so that document is it's in the documents for our Finance Committee.
and Human Resources
That's right.
Committee meeting today. It's in that document. It's the
the
very
5-year
last one. It's a 5-year projection.
forecast. Yeah.
And it shows you what's been baked in, which does not include extended hours. And it basically says we are at break even next year.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that, and then I've got one other thing. My conclusion after hearing the presentation at the Finance Committee meeting today is given that we are not authorized to do any new sources of revenue right now, I think the only option, if we are to do all of the things that we want to do, which include transit, urban forester position, urban forestry plan, adding a person, essentially a recycling person. What else do we have? Let's see, money in the capital budget for solar, the whole host of things that get to more money for affordable housing. All of the things that everybody has talked about today. Compensation, right? All of those things, there just literally is not the money in the budget now or coming. So I'm just going to go ahead and plant the seed right now that I think we need to be talking about a property tax increase for next year. Until we get authorized to do something else, that is our only option. And that is, I realize for some people that is going to present a conflict around affordability, but that's a conversation we just need to have. So I will be proposing that when the time comes at our appropriate, as part of our budget process. So I just want to put that out there. I also want to just respond to the Sunrise folks, just again, so people don't think that we're not doing anything. At the SACE meeting just last week, I think everybody on SACE agreed, yes, we're in a crisis. There's no doubt we're in a crisis. The question is, what do we do about it? And again, I will say that Asheville is not doing nothing. We are doing more. I would say, again, we are doing more than any city in North Carolina on this. We are farther down the road in implementing, in figuring out how to implement our 100% renewable resolution than any other city. You will not find another city in the entire country that has avoided the construction of a 190 megawatt natural gas-fired peaker plant, working in partnership with the city and our utility, a regulated monopoly. I would also say, since on the point of Duke, neither the city nor the county nor the EITF has embraced Duke's goals. That's not our job. Those are Duke's goals. Those are not our goals. And working in partnership with them doesn't mean that we have embraced them, that we accede to them, that we agree with them. Nothing like that. If we had to agree with everybody that we ever partnered with on everything that they believed, we would never partner. So Duke has their goals, we have our goals. And in fact, to the degree that Duke has said anything about our goals, they have said that their job is to help us as one of their major customers in this region to reach our goals, and they have taken firm steps to do that. I will also point out again that the resolution commits us to do more than just meet our own energy goals with renewable energy. We are committed to supporting the county in their goal around 100% renewable for the community. So it's just simply not correct to say that our goal is limited to just the city operations and the limited emissions that represents. And finally, I think we're not afraid of this conversation. We've been having this conversation at the City of Asheville for 10 years. So we're not afraid of it. This is simply the next step of it. We had a rigorous discussion about renewable energy last year. This is again, just the next iteration of that conversation, and figuring out what to do is, we're doing what we do to figure out what to do, which is that we send it to our committee of experts and people who have dedicated their time to figure this out. And so what Stacey did was several people on the committee volunteered to work with the Sunrise folks to make the amendment, to make the resolution more Asheville specific. And I think when that comes back to Stacey, it'll come back to Stacey, there'll be discussion there, and then it will, probably eventually get to us. So we're not, I don't think anybody up here is afraid of this conversation. There was an excellent op-ed this weekend by Councilman Young about climate change. We're not afraid of it. We just have, you may not like this, but this is the way government works. We have a process that we have to go to. We can't, nothing just comes to us and we say yes without vetting it. And that's just the way it works. So we are doing our process. We are committed to that, and hopefully we'll get there soon.
And I would like to compliment the folks involved with Sunrise that are here tonight. Thank you all for coming to this. It's hard for us old people to hear we haven't been doing anything. So pardon us for getting defensive. This time last year, I was actually up in New York talking about investment in sustainability, and Asheville being the first in the state to do green bonds on our water system. So I echo Julie's sentiment that we've been trying to lean into this conversation for a very long time. Julie and I actually participated in a year-long program at Duke looking at this at a state level. And it's very clear that the biggest things that will move the needle are car driving and getting the state to mandate a renewable mix for generation in our state. Because the state, well, you could do it at a federal level, but at the state level, the state tells Duke what its generation mix has to be, and the city has no control over that. So if the state were to wake up tomorrow and say the portfolio mix for generation in North Carolina has got to be 100% renewable, that would be, so while I appreciate the effort at a local level, because I do think it's really important for local governments to be tuned into this issue and be leaders on this issue, and we've tried to do that. Unfortunately, some of the things that make the biggest difference are going to happen at a state level. So I'm assuming Sunrise is also engaged on a state level at the legislature. And I would be glad to be a part of that. I'd be glad to meet with your organization. If you ever need to go down to Raleigh and walk the halls, I actually used to staff a public utilities committee in the legislature. I'm familiar with how that works. And I would be glad to do that. So. Personally. So thank you all for coming down here tonight, and obviously everyone else who's here as well to talk about issues like transit and other issues. Well, we had a lot of commentary at the end of the council. Anybody else want to chime in? No? Okay. We do have a closed session.
We do. I move that Asheville City Council go into closed session for the following reasons: to prevent disclosure of information that is privileged and confidential pursuant to laws of North Carolina, are not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of General Statutes. The statutory authorization is contained in North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A1. The law that makes information privileged and confidential is North Carolina General Statute Chapter 143 through -318-10E. To consult with an attorney employed by the city about matters with respect to which the attorney-client privilege between the city and its attorney must be preserved, specifically the handling or settlement of claims including but not limited to the following matters: City of Asheville versus Parkway Court LLC. The statutory authorization is contained in North Carolina General Statute, Chapters 143-318. To discuss matters related to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in Asheville, including on a list of potential economic development incentives.
Second? Your second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will adjourn from the closed session.